So we'll begin by looking at the Torah Shmuel. That's the title on the top of the page. It's Hamishach Lekacha. We see days, which Rabbi mentioned in the footnote in the Maimer in the Sichos yesterday. Rabbi mentions it, right? In the Likkutei, that we're trying to tell us is that this idea of becoming a shliach, becoming the one who serves Hashem, switching modes from my geschmack, what I appreciate and what I understand, to serving the Eibishter, that's the highest halicha, it's the highest lecha, it's the highest movement a person can make. That switch. And that switch is represented by Zion Cheshvon, as we're explaining, and we're going to continue to explain today, because we go from TISHRAY, which to a large degree centers on the geschmack that a yid enjoys of Gilul Lakus. And there he goes to Hashem wants to do b'tachton. So he becomes a shliach in that moment, and he becomes centered and focused on fulfilling the Eibishter's mission rather than on what he enjoys. And the footnote there recited to Oisid Beis of Hamishach Lekacha, good morning, where he explains this inyan of Yafa Sha'achas B'tshuva Ma'aseh Tov B'Lam Hazim B'Kol Chayim Hab. That mentioned very briefly, and here it's Mubarichus. And as you're going to see, this is the Chayra, the Mokar of yesterday's Hayom Yom, which would maybe explain by Ashkacha Pratis why that was Hayom Yom for Ches Cheshvon. That's the first, everyone said about the Ches Adar. Today's Tes Cheshvon, nonetheless. Everyone said about Ches Adar that the uniqueness of Ches Adar is that it's the first day when the Yidden had a full day without Moshe Rabbeinu. I know that they had at least part of the day with Moshe Rabbeinu. So Ches Adar is the first day the Yidden had to really think for themselves and serve the Eibishter. Everyone said that about Ches Adar. So maybe Ches Cheshvon is similar things. The first day that's not completely fully not Tishrei. Maybe that's why it's yesterday's Hayom Yom Taka. So we'll see it comes from here. It comes from Fidik Eva, but the Fidik Eva is talking about what it says here. Okay, so I should base.
We're back to Golus.
Back to Golus. That's the subject here, right? Okay, your base. As I mentioned yesterday, the Hamishach Lekacha is dedicated to a large degree to explaining this idea that the Iker is Ma'aseh mitzvah. The Iker is the act of doing a mitzvah. That's the Iker of the main message of the Hamishach. So he talks a lot about this. And explains it on many different levels. So here he says, we're looking at the Torah Shmuel here. Based on which the Chacham say, Gabi Karbonis, Bad Karbonis, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says, Nachas Ruach Lafonai, I have enjoyment, I have Nachas. Shamarti Nasir Etzerni. Right, the pasuk says by Karbonis Reach Nichayach. So the meaning of Reach Nichayach is Nachas Ruach Lafonai, that Shamarti Nasir Etzerni. Hashem is happy that what he asked for was fulfilled. So it doesn't say Hashem is happy because he likes Karbonis per se. It says Hashem is happy because what I asked was done. So what's the chiluk what Hashem asked? No chiluk. So if the Marash says, Moshe b'Karbonis, Teinu b'Chol HaMitzvos. Same thing with all of the mitzvahs, why not? But Amru b'Karbonis, so why is it selected and said by Karbonis? So in other places it explains the Karbonis is the Iker Avodah, it's a lack of Chel B'Vedama, it's to give up of one's nefesh Bahamas and so on. That's why it's the model. But here he doesn't get into that. Just says you damu kol mitzvahs lehen. All of the mitzvahs should be compared to this one point. So you pick one mitzvah to make the point that whatever I ask you do, and that brings me nachas. So it says that Marash ukashen is boinim b'zahetev. When we think about this considerably, yuvon goitel mailas elam haza. We'll understand the virtue of elam haza because shabah in elam haza yochla adam manivra, the human created being, Abal Gvul who is limited, can lasis nachas ruach liyitzrei. Can actually give the Eibishter nachas, give the Eibishter joy. But the whole idea of Elam Haba is the reverse. It's so you should enjoy. That's why it's designed that way. So not Elam Haza is designed to serve the Eibishter. Elam Haba is designed to receive from the Eibishter. So now if you think about that, obviously you can see the Maila of Elam Haza. One cannot compare whatever enjoyment you'll ever enjoy ever, including Elam Haba, to Hashem's nachas. Can't. We're Bali Gvul, so whatever nachas we enjoy is bugbul. But the Eibishter's nachas is blikvul. Here's the part. He too can get a nachas from this. But thinking about the fact that his avodah Elam Haza gives the Eibishter more nachas than anything he'll ever enjoy in Elam Haba, will give him a nachas ruach in Elam Haza. As we see, and this is where the Hayom Yom is. Yesterday's Hayom Yom. We see from simple people. If he gets the opportunity to cause some pleasure, the Gadol Hadar, the greatest Talmid Chacham, is well known for his both Avodas Hashem, his B'Yira and in the Torah. The very fact that he has an opportunity to give something to us, to such a person, that itself will give him incredible enjoyment. More than any of the enjoyment of all the food and whatever he eats, and all the things that he finds pleasure in life in, those aren't the highlights of his life. People talk about it all the time, but their highlight in life is they never sent him a note. This is the highlight in life. They did something and never responded. I enjoyed it. That's the highlight in life. More geschmack than all the things and the geschmack of things that they're chasing in life their whole life. None of that compares to the moment that the Rebbe told them, thank you, I appreciate it. There's an incomparable distance between a created being and the creator. That's incomparable. That distance is incomparably greater. Here's two humans, one incomparably greater than the other. And now we're talking about a created being versus the Eibishter. Okay, and so the sweetness, the delight, and the preciousness of the joy, which a person should feel. From the fact that he's giving the Eibishter nachas in the doing of mitzvahs, that geschmack should be that geschmack that he feels that right now I'm doing what the Eibishter wants should give him more joy in life than all of the geschmack he'll get in all of Elam Haba, including as we're seeing Mashiach's time. Even though, as we explained in the previous Oisius, that the Elam Haba is going to be the essence of essential geschmack, which he explains at great length what that is. It's to a large degree what he does throughout the Temshech. He explains various different levels of Elam Haba and what the geschmack of Elam Haba is, and then says that all of that doesn't compare to the geschmack of doing a mitzvah. That's like the whole Hemshech. So he keeps on climbing higher and higher in levels of Elam Haba and says, but this is not compared to the geschmack of doing a mitzvah. That's what he's doing here. So even though the geschmack of Elam Haba is etzem einig atzmi, the essential essence of einig, whatever that is, as he explains, imkos, and nonetheless, all of that is your geschmack. It's a human, lowly geschmack defined by human experience, which is incomparable to the infinite truth of Hashem. From the Mashal mentioned above. In Canaan, so Yuva Matuv time now we can understand very well. That which our Chachamim said, that a moment of doing tshuva and ma'aseh tov in this world is greater than anything else, and not just for the Eibishter, but for the human, because it's great for the Eibishter, because it's geschmack the Eibishter, therefore it's even more precious for the human. Because only in Elam Hazeh can we do things that cause the Eibishter a joy. Before the one who spoke in the world has become as a result of his speech, right? This is a description of the Eibishter. From the sweetness, the preciousness, the delight, and the nimus is like the pleasantry that he feels in fulfilling the Eibishter's command. Tigil hanefesh sabasa. His sensitivity, his spiritual sensitivity will be repulsed by the notion of fleshly geschmack, chasing this garbage when I have the opportunity to do the Eibishter's ratzon. And therefore, this geschmack of fulfilling the Eibishter's will is greater than the essential delight that's going to be when Mashiach comes. This is a mitzvah ta'achshav, which is fulfilled dafka to the mitzvahs today. Even at the level of Yosef Kigibor, which is a level he explained in previous in previous issues. And this element doesn't explain how, it just says a fact, and we'll see in the Sicha Vayetze, which we'll learn after we learn the Sicha of Lecha, maybe we'll see some more beer in this. This idea of feeling the Eibishter's nachas will be nizgala to neshamas when Mashiach comes, even though he just said that the Geshmak is greater than when Mashiach comes. But that Geshmak, which is greater than the Geshmak of Mashiach comes, that will be nizgala in tzaddikim. So it's hard to understand exactly what he means. He does explain it further, but we'll see. Again, we'll see in the next Sicha, and then we'll see maybe some Isis there. Because the Gemara says, Tzaddikim shikru Hashem shel Kadosh Baruch. Tzaddikim will be called by Hashem's name. Here's Rashi, Sheyeh Shmam Havaya. They're going to be called Havaya. So it's meaning to, it seems like, and as we're going to see from that Sicha, that it seems like the Vart is that the Yid is going to experience, not that, in other words, the one thing is that in Elam Haba Hashem gives him reward of Geshmak from what he did. But then there is that Tzaddik becomes one with the Eibishter to the point that it's the Eibishter's Geshmak that he happens to be experiencing. And that's the Lechora we're talking about here, where the Tzaddik himself becomes the Eibishter's name. And therefore he too will feel the Eibishter's Geshmak in the mitzvahs because he becomes part of Eibishter. Something like that. That's what he's saying. It's not that the Eibishter is giving megala to him something of what he is feeling, because that already would be a reward that's less than the actual asiyas mitzvahs. But rather, it's Hemis al Lasham. The Yid will ascend to the place where Hashem was enjoying what he did, and therefore will also be part of that. Okay, so this is the source that Rabbi talks about in the Sicha that we're learning here, that we saw yesterday. That this idea that when a person is in Tishrei mode, where he's at Harabayas and he's receiving the Geshmak of the Eibishter, that's comparable to Elam Haba, which is designed to give the Yid the Geshmak. But then there is Elam Haza, there's Zayin Cheshvon, where the Yid becomes a Shliach of the Eibishter, where the center of that experience is fulfilling the Eibishter's will. And that itself is the biggest Geshmak.
I think the Marash just at the end, where he said that we'll have a Geshmak in the world because a higher Geshmak because of the Eibishter's. Didn't that make it about me again?
I know, right. That's what I was saying. It's very hard to understand. Which is why he ends with meaning not like the Eibishter is giving it to you as a reward for what you did, but because you're going to become absorbed into that experience of the Eibishter. Right, because the other problem is he just finished saying that the Geshmak of doing what Hashem wants is greater than all the Geshmak of Elam Haba, and then he says you're going to get that in Elam Haba. What are you saying? So that's why he's saying it's not that you're going to get it in Elam Haba, but in Elam Haba you're going to be absorbed into that experience. We'll get more oisius in the Sicha Vayetze that we'll get to. Right, that's the key to the answer. It's not about Gilui, but you're going to end up there, but not because the Eibishter is a gala to you, as if the Eibishter is trying to appease you. It's just that you're going to end up in that place where the Eibishter enjoys what you're doing. And Lechora, in the Sicha Vayetze, which we'll get to as soon as we finish the Sicha Lecha, we'll get more oisius, perhaps, for that. Okay. So we're ois test in the Sicha of Lecha. The Rebbe already explained the kesher between Zayin Cheshvon and Lecha. In that in Lecha, even though technically speaking, Avram is going to Eretz Yisrael, but the going to Eretz Yisrael is not the Iker. The Iker is the Lecha. The Iker is the fact that Hashem told him, now you're working for me. That's the Iker. It so happened that Shlichus went to Eretz Yisrael. But the Iker is that Hashem made him into a Shliach, that now no longer are you spreading a lakos because that's what you figured out. But now you're spreading a lakos because I asked you to. And that's the whole difference. Where it goes from what I understand to this is what Hashem instructed me to do. That's the word of Lecha. Even though he happens to be going to Eretz Yisrael.
It means he gets it. Doesn't mean the whole time is that way, even before he gets it.
Oh, so that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about this, which is why I was going to say it later, but you think Avraham Avinu changed his tactics and the Mekad of other people after Hashem told Lech Lecha? Whatever he was saying till now worked. People are coming. And now they're doing Lech Lecha. He's changing what he's saying. L'chura, he's saying the same thing. L'chura. But now that Hashem told him to say it, it's a whole other level. Even though he's saying the exact same things. L'chura. I don't see why he would change his tactic. Other than now, he's doing it because Hashem asked. So it's a whole other level. That's l'chora the difference. Even though Be'etzem is doing the exact same thing l'chora. So whatever speeches he was giving before, he's giving the same now after. But now he's doing it because Hashem asked. Different level. L'chora.
He just became a shliach.
Yeah. Okay, so then this explains the next ice. This is also the meaning, the explanation of the fact. The pasuk details where he's going from without detailing where he's going to. That's the whole Likkutei. The pasuk is Mefaret Lech Lecha Ma'artzecha, and we're always tested. It's on page 66. Lech Lecha Ma'artzecha La'Leticha Beisavicha La'Oretz Asher Ereka. The pasuk details at great length where he's going from, your homeland, your place of birth, where your father's house is. It doesn't even specify where he's going. So Hadagosh Eini Mishum Musam Kan Ala Lichas Shel Avram El Eretz Yisrael. What's being highlighted here is not where he's going to Eretz Yisrael, but more on where he's leading from, which is from his being as an independent self, what he figures out, which is expressed in Artzecha Ma'aretzecha Beisavicha. Yeah, that explains it. I think Rashi also. Yeah, there's an earlier also that decided to a Sichos, look at the Sichos where it says that. Yeah, in 52. I think that's also that Rashi. No, that's a later Rashi. Okay. Especially as Chassidus explains, which Chassidus is basically explaining. There's actually two beautiful Chassidus, but one of them is that when the Torah says Lech Lecha to leave, it's not to leave, as the simple pshat in the pasuk is to leave the negativity of terach behind. That's like a one pshat. The other pshat is to leave in even the positivity that you have created. Artzecha is your desires, Maticha is what you're accustomed to, and Beisavicha is your chachma. And all of that was in Kedusha, but it was yours. And therefore you have to go out of that. Not from the Eibishter.
The levels are not in order.
That's also explained, right? I think it's also explained, isn't it? Does Midas have its own makar? But is Midas Tivim versus Midas Sichlim? Yeah. Okay, the Moshe Avraham calls a Kashlok Tishuv Alakos, even though Avraham Avinu's Ratzin and his Midas and his Seichel were all for Lakos, Apacholzas nonetheless, by his Artzecha. It was his understanding of Lakos. It was his desire for Lakos. It was his feelings for Lakos. As independent being, he developed his interests in Lakos. And he's being told, leave all that behind and go to Al-Aretz Asher Eka. The key being on the Aleph. I will show you. That's the point. Doing that which Hashem instructs. This causes an elevation that's incomparable to the level before. Now he becomes the Eibishter Shliach. Creates a connection between the created being and the creator, similar to what we're learning here in V'kacha, what we learned. This began the process of what's going to take place in the Matan Torah. Because what changed in Matan Torah, as we learn in Chassidus, is not the presence of Torah and mitzvahs. Torah and mitzvahs existed before. The key is not the creation of Torah and mitzvahs, but the matan, the giving of Torah and mitzvahs. And that beforehand, whoever did Torah and mitzvahs is because they figured it out. And now we're doing the Eibishter's mitzvahs because we were asked to do so. And that's a different level. So the beginning of that process is Lech Lecha, the first command that Hashem gives to a Yid. Even though Lech also had a command, but obviously it didn't take. Raya didn't make any Bali Shuvah. Right? But Lech Lecha, the first command of the Eibishter to the Yidden, this is the beginning of the process of Matan Torah. And here comes the Hira. Just translating the words directly in the Hira is very geshmak. It says, this is the level, this is the lesson derived from Zayin Cheshvon Asher Chal, which always falls, Kedal as mentioned above in the beginning of the Sikha. It consistently happens in the week of Lech Lecha. What are we learning? Like you said, we're going into Galus. So says the Rebbe Shagam betkufa sagalos. Shezu as manche bo yotzim ma'oiskim minyonei haregel. We're going into Golos. We're no longer busy with Yom Tif, we're busy with mundane matters. So I'll call his Daira. Daira is not to change anything you're doing. Everything you're doing is perfectly fine. Daira is to change how you think about it. I'll call Echad Ladas. Each person has to know. Which itself, by the way, is something that you need to know. Everybody knows never talks about a Maiso or Ikir and everything has to have a Daira, a Poil. Sometimes the Poil is to change how you think without changing one thing you do. Many times, that concludes the Sichos. The Rabbi Poil is we should know X, Y, and Z, just to know something. That's what he says here. What's the Hira? I'll call Echad Ladas, if to know. A person should not feel sad because Yom Tov is over. And Zayin Cheshvon, now he's back to work. Allah of Lasas is should go forward with great joy. Knowing. Dafka now. He now becomes the Shliach Shluchah Kamosim Mamish. Becoming a Shliach, this is the greatest joy. Because now I'm doing what Hashem wants. That's the idea. To not be depressed on Zayin Cheshvon, not to be depressed that Yom Tov is over. To be happy that you're going marching forward in Yavodah, which, by the way, is different than other times. Many times, in the Indian of Likkutei Aliyah, it's one of those sugyas in the Torah, and Rebbe has two different biyudim, and he gives sometimes, and it's the same things with the transition from Tishrei to Cheshvon, sometimes different biyudim. So a lot of times the biyur in Likkutei Aliyah is so not for sure not the way it was that the Yerida is not good, is annoying, but you'll get a cookie at the end of the Aliyah. But oftentimes that explains that if the Yerida is a necessary component for the Aliyah, then the Pnimis of the Yerida is in Aliyah. This is a biyur that we give a lot of times. That from the very fact that the Yerida is a necessary component of the Aliyah means that the Pnimis of the Yerida is the Aliyah. Okay, that's oftentimes the biyur. And parallel to that, Lechora, sometimes the biyur is that now that we're going into Lecha, now that we're going into post Yom Tov mode, if you talk and behave the way you're supposed to, that's going to prove that Yom Tov was worthwhile. Because in Yom Tov, Hashem gave you all these koiches. And how are you going to prove that you took the koiches? By fulfilling what you have to do throughout the rest of the year. Right? So there's in that mode, in that thinking, there's room to imagine that the Yerida is a real Yerida. But if you dig with Pnimius, we're talking proving that Tishrei was worthwhile. We begal the Pnimius of Tishrei by proving that even the Yerida were serving Hashem, and the Yerida is Tzarech Aliyah, and therefore Batson the Pnimius is an Aliyah. Whatever the biyur are. But over here, the biyur is completely different. Over here, the biyur is that in the state of the Yerida lane, over there, that's the Ilui. Not because you're proving anything about Tishrei. He doesn't say here that when you do what you want during the rest of the year, that shows that Tishrei was worthwhile. He doesn't say that here. It doesn't, and he at the beginning he said that you could say that the reason why Zayin Cheshvon is valuable because it's Yerida Tzarech Aliyah. But that's not good enough. Because Avram Avinu is going up to Eretz Yisrael. So you have to find a different biyur. To which the Rebbe says that in the state of Yerida, that's the biggest thing because you're becoming the Rebbe Shleich and doing what Hashem wants, which is a different biyur, which we find in other places. Which that the Aliyah of the Yerida is not after, and not even that the Pnimis of the Yerida is the Aliyah because it's a necessary component. But the very fact that you're serving Hashem in the Yerida, that's the Kavanah, and therefore that's it. That's the Aliyah. That right now you're doing what Hashem wants. It's a different biyur, which we'll see is more elaborated on the other Sikha.
The Lecha versus Zayin Cheshvon, there's a nuance there. Rabbi Avinu, like you're saying, is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
With a hakara that now I'm doing it for Eibishter, not for me. And Cheshvon is not. I was in Elikus. Now I'm not. There was Gila Elikus. Now there's not Gila Elikus. Right.
So in Ois, what was it, Zion? Rebbe kind of switched that and said the difference between Tishrei and Zayin Cheshvon. First, he said the difference between Tishrei and Zayin Cheshvon is Gila Elikus versus no Gila Elikus. But then he said the premise of that is that you're going from taking to giving, right? And that's how it connected to Lech. Okay, so it concludes with Begilui Mamish B'Cholel Kula Begula Mitzvah Shlema. Aydem Shitzkenu Kashem Niglu Kveda Hashem Veroka Basa Yachtav Kipi Hashem Tik. Okay, let's open the Sikha now by Yetzei. This is Chelek Tezvav. It's not learning the whole Sikha, we're learning 4 oisius. Ois Hey, Vav, Zayin, and Ches. Sorry, hey, ches, tes, and yud. The ikir really is ches, tes, yud, but hey is a kind of a preamble. It's a Sichos Vayetze, and as we'll see, that it's talking about Vayetze Yaakov Elacharana. Yaakov again is going on this great Yerida. He's leaving Beersheba and going to Charan, to the Yerida. And over there too, it's L'tzarech Aliyah. And over there, it explains, as we'll see, 3 dargis in Yerida L'tzarech Aliyah. So I say, Ma'isa Avis Sim Labanim. That which our forefathers went through is a Sim Labanim, which this is a phrase that I've quoted quite a bit. That it's not just that it's a prototype, but actually it's the model which creates what we're going to be doing. And everything we do is because our Abbas once went through that. We'll move on. So therefore, it's understood. This idea that Yaakov leaves Beersheba and goes to Haran, this is true and relevant and exists in every person's avodah. As the Erech Chaim writes, the pasuk by Beersheba Yelcharana is alluding to the neshama descending this world. The Gam Nidus Bnei Solagolus. Shehi Yirid L'Tzarech Aliyah. We know this. So now says there, so the things mentioned above, the 3 dargis in Yaakov's Yerida, the Tzarech Aliyah exists also, but Yaakov that exists in our Yirid L'Tzarech Aliyah, just as it existed in Yaakov's Yerida L'Tzarech Aliyah. So what are the 3 nyanim? And there was Ma'arach in each of these 3 nyanim, but we're going to focus on the 3rd one because that's going to get to our discussion. So level 1. When the neshama is above, it's a tzaddik. Everything's perfect. When the neshama comes down, and now it becomes part of a guf and nefesh bahamis, which conceal and deny lakus. And nonetheless, and nonetheless still does what Hashem asks. He becomes a Baal Tshuva. He's putting it this way because he's not. There is no Chas V'Shalom saying that a person has to sin in order to do Teshuvah, even though that too becomes almost clear in the next Osius. But they were saying that's in fact that a neshama is faced with challenge and ignores the challenge. That's all is already in Baal Tshuva. The neshama returns to the Eibishter after having been distanced from the Eibishter, even if it's without actual, without actual Veda. Although, in one of the artists later, which I encourage you to look at, which we're not going to learn, there were talks about this when they get to the Baal Tshuva Kipshutei. Okay, so that's level 1, proving the neshama's dedication to Hashem by giving a challenge. That's one level. Right? So in our model, that would be, we're proving that Yutaka took the message of Tishrei by serving Hashem after Tishrei. It's kind of what the model here. Yeah, I saw Lashon yesterday, searching for this Inyan. I saw Lashon in Sichos Parshas Lecha that writes, Halavai, we Taka used all the koyach that was being poured to us. And then the Sicha goes ... So that's level 1. Level 2. He's saying Krudavu because Yaakov went to Charan to get married. But this means that Neshama does mitzvahs. That's another thing. Even without the union of challenges, the very fact that a Neshama is in this world now can do Torah mitzvahs, which he can't do when he's Lamaila. Okay, that's virtue number 2. And virtue number 3, so by the neshama coming down to this world, I'm working with physical matter. The neshama achieves that the world should become a home for Hashem. Now, what's the point here? The David Tatam is not the issue here. The real issue is, okay, well, we'll see in a second. And as a result of that, he reaches a much higher level. Now let's look at Hara 23. There's 2 inyanim in this idea that the neshama now is fulfilling the Eibishter's kavanah of Dirba Tatani. Number one, mitzad inyan debir olam gufa, and the fact that the olam is so. One thing is forget the neshama's. Well, neither of this is about the neshama. But number one is the effect in the world. The world became a better place. Aleph. And number two is the fact that you fulfill what Hashem wants. It so happens what Hashem wants is a direct atonim. But the ikir here is you're feeling what Hashem wants. And that's going to be Kidlakamon Siftes. And
His pleasure.
yeah, exactly. And Elakamon Hara 44, which we're going to get to. Okay, so now top at 263. So with the Kudazu in this English, that the world becomes a home for Hashem. And the aliyah of neshama through this fact that he's making a different atonim. There is a virtue to serving Hashem in your activity. That everything you do is for the sake of heaven. You're eating, you're sleeping, drinking. And that you discover Hashem in all of these things. If you do it, this is another one of those subjects in the Torah, the difference between these two inyanim. So eating for the sake of serving Hashem later versus seeing Hashem in the actual olam, which is b'chol derech hachadeyu. Not that I am going to work so I can make a living, so I can give tzedakah and pay for my Jewish education. But moreover, in work itself, I see Eibishter, I see Hashgacha Pratis, and I see the Eibishter in the work. B'chol derech hachadeyu. But all that is not Torah mitzvahs. And there's a virtue there. Al pnei ha'avodah shleim l'Torah v'kiyum mitzvahs. There's a virtue there over beyond Torah mitzvahs. See, it's not the subject of that we're going to be discussing, but it is the subject of Vav and Zion, which we're skipping, which is in the first two levels where you're coming down to Elam Haza to prove that you're still dedicated to Hashem even when there's challenges. What's the ikar there? Torah mitzvahs. Ignore Elam Haza and do what Hashem wants. And the same thing in level two, where Lamayla Hashem can't do mitzvahs. Now it can do mitzvahs. Again, the ikar is mitzvahs. But now when we say the ikar is to fulfill Hashem's kavanah of making a different tachtonim, the ikar is not in your Torah mitzvahs, the ikar is in your Eisik Ba'elam Haza. And that should be for either L'Shem Shemayim or Dayehu, either one. So because here now, the things you do just to survive as a human, they too are for the Eibishter. You get to see the Eibishter in these things. So now this taka penetrates tachton. Okay, we're going to skip Vav and Zion because over here too, that was going to get into why even in the other two dargis, the ikir is not Torah mitzvahs but b'chol derech hachadeyu. So that's not our subject now.
So these two things that is explaining in this last.
Vav and Zion.
No, in the last part of the is the difference between the two things of Gimel, correct?
If it's between, why the virtue of Gimel, the pashtus is that everything is involved in the avodah. The first two levels, the ikir is Torah mitzvahs. But in the third level, where it's about making different tachtonim, the ikir is not Torah mitzvahs. The ikir is everything you're doing. But in Vav and Zion, he's going to explain that even in the other two levels, also the ikir is b'chol derech hachadeyu. But again, it's not the subject of our discussion.
So basically, the mile of over
Torah mitzvahs. That's right. And he's going to explain that even on the other two levels.
even over the just doing something. No, I'm not saying.
What? Sorry?
And even over the first level.
Yeah, even in the first level, yeah. Okay, so now he gets to the third level. Notwithstanding all the above, where he explained in Vav and Zion the great virtues of the first two levels, where the Yid comes down and becomes a Baal Tshuva because he's faced with challenges and still stays committed. And the second level where now he gets to the Torah mitzvahs. Even the salos of the Shama on level one, which is Teshuvah, the higher level of Teshuvah, as he explains in Vav, that is the Teshuvah that comes not from doing Torah mitzvahs and ignoring Olam Haza, but the Teshuvah that comes from elevating Olam Haza itself, and his Doima cannot be compared. This Alis and Ignomis themselves cannot compare to the Aliyah of doing what Hashem wants and making the Torah Tachton, which is level 3. And a footnote number 33, which I want you to have a look at. It's a little bit longer thing. It talks about Malchava Kupshetei. Now this too is there. That Fichas Denis Zachius is very Ishmael.
Not level 2.
No, it's talking about level 1. Level 3. And footnote 33 talks about the Indian of Balchava. Because before you talk about Tshuva and the fact that you're faced with challenges, even before you did any Avedas. But in 33, it talks about Balchivik Pshute, someone who's dealing with past Chatoyim. Okay, so I don't have enough time. Because let's read this one paragraph and we'll get a glimpse, then we'll finish tomorrow. One of the explanations for this is why the greatest aliyah is okay, we're not going to be able to finish this whole thing, but where we're going is that all of the things mentioned above, tshuva and doing Torah mitzvahs, is all an aliyah of the human getting the best he can possibly get. And the aliyah of doing David Tachtonim is now you're doing what the Eibishter wants, which is why it links to what we're talking about. And we're going to get beautiful Isis in the Stian. And we're going to see in footnote 44, which David cited to earlier, we're going to see how that gives schar and gishmak, even though it's not about me. Very, very interesting. So that coming by Hashem tomorrow. It's a wonderful day.